In case you're not aware, you are here for part 4 on a series of teachings on fasting. Matt taught the first 3 sessions, and those were great. So if you did not get to hear those, I encourage you to get a hold of those so that you can hear those. They're really awesome. I'll just start out with the introduction that I wrote here. In our previous sessions, we looked at some of the history of fasting, if fasting is for today, why we fast, who we are fasting for, and our motives for fasting. These are some of the things that Matt covered when he was speaking. I hope everyone was encouraged as I am. I feel really recharged and renewed with a new perspective on fasting. I think that it's just kind of interesting, like we kind of get in a rut what we think about fasting, and it doesn't always bring up the most positive feelings when we think about it. But I think it was just really encouraging just hearing Matt just getting into the Word and what the Word says about fasting. And so I don't know. I said I would even go as far to say that my thoughts associated with the word fasting have changed. Not only that, I'm a little excited for the next fast. I know that seems kind of weird, but if you're not, maybe you should listen to him. Because when we hear the word fast, it immediately brings thoughts and feelings to mind. We need to think about what are those thoughts and feelings and why do we think them. We need to set our minds free from the bondage that says we can't do it. And I encourage you, when you are given an invitation to fast, whether it's a group that's fasting and they've invited you to participate in that, whether it's your church or whatever it is, or if you have a friend that asks you to fast with them, or maybe it's just God is inviting you into a personal fast, I encourage you that your heart's cry be yes, and then you can ask God exactly what that's going to look like for you, and let Him guide you through that. It says, the scripture says in Matthew 26:41, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Sometimes we have to kind of get to the point that our spirit's willing, because sometimes our spirit's not that willing. We don't even get to the weak flesh part. So I encourage you, get to the spirit's willing part. Because there's going to be things that are going to come against that immediately. A couple of quotes that I like. One from Derek Prince says, fasting seems unfamiliar and even frightening to many people. Yet this attitude is strange. I can just picture this look on his face. It's like, I don't understand why people think that. It says, fasting was regularly practiced by God's people throughout the Bible. Fasting is also an accepted part of most other major world religions, such as Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. I mean, I don't know how we got to the point that we've made it a foreign thing that we don't talk about and we don't do. I don't really know how we got there. Part of it might be our concerns for fasting. So Arthur Wallace says, there are others whose misgivings, concerns, and concern the practical aspect. To them, fasting and starving are synonymous, and they fear it will have harmful results because no man ever hates his own flesh but nourishes and cherishes it. They oppose fasting almost instinctively. Do be careful, they say. You could seriously impair your health. Living such a busy life, you cannot afford to get run down. I don't know about you, but a lot of those sound kind of familiar. So there's the things that people tell you as soon as you say you're fasting. They have all of these concerns, and mostly we've already thought of them ourselves. So I'm going to start out with who should fast. I mean, that sounds like a good place to start. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others that they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. So here we already looked at this once before, that it's not a matter of if you fast, but it's a matter of when you fast. And so I just made a list of some reasons people might fast and who would fast. Those who want to make more space in their life for God. Those who desire to deepen their prayer life. Anybody that wants to grow in thankfulness and gratitude. Anyone who wants to draw nearer to God and allow Him to be the comforter. Someone with a specific prayer assignment. Anyone who wants to hear God. I should have left some space in there for you to write in your own in case that none of those hit on you, but just in case. I think I thought of quite a few. Hopefully I covered everybody in the room so we should all fast. Now, that may mean different things for different people, and we're going to talk about some of that. So if you want, you can just write your own in there, and you'll include yourself if I didn't include you. So some of the types of fast. We've already established in the previous parts of the series that in the Bible, fasting was giving up some or all food, and in some cases, water. Merriam-Webster Dictionary seems to agree with that. It says to abstain from food, to eat sparingly, or to abstain from some foods. If you were to go to your doctor and you're going to have a procedure done tomorrow and he tells you that he would like you to fast before the procedure, he does indeed also mean food. He does not mean that he doesn't want you to get on Facebook and give too much information. Feel free, tell everybody on Facebook what you're having done tomorrow, but don't eat food. So he agrees. So that's what we would call a normal fast. There's also a variety of ways to engage in fasting. Those might be individually and those might be corporately. And fasts are usually done for a specific amount of time. Usually you know going into it. Sometimes you don't. You might just be saying, I'm going to fast till I have breakthrough. But mostly you set those ahead of time. You know how long it's going to be for. So the normal fast, we already agreed that it's pretty widely accepted that that's to fast from food. And so that would be no food, but you are drinking water. So I just gave one example. Since it's commonly accepted, I just figured, Jesus fasted for 40 days, and it says that afterwards he was hungry. It doesn't say that he was thirsty, so it implies that he was without food, but that he wasn't thirsty. So I figure Jesus is the best example, so I'm just going to give one there. But another fast is an absolute fast. This is also commonly known as the Esther fast. Moses did this for 80 consecutive days. Obviously, he had supernatural help doing that. That is not something that I would encourage you to try to do, unless God tells you to, and then we're going to trust that he's going to supernaturally help you also. Elijah, same kind of thing. He went 40 days taking nothing. Saul of Tarsus went 3 days with taking nothing. That is what we typically think of as an Esther fast. 3 days, no food, no water. His is actually one of my favorite fasts in the Bible because it was pretty awesome. It not only did it have a major impact on Christianity today, I mean, I just can't even imagine without Paul what it would have been like. I suppose God could have raised somebody else up to fill that place and all would be the same or something, but it's a pretty awesome fast. But personally, it was a pretty awesome fast because he fasted for 3 days until Ananias came. And at that point, he was filled with the Spirit. The scales fell off of his eyes. He was baptized, and then he ate. And so I figured that's a pretty good fast. So I like that one. Got a lot done. Many people are concerned about an Esther fast. If you tell someone you're doing an Esther fast, they immediately have some concerns for your health. And if it is even possible for a person to go for 3 days without food and water. It is hard on the body. It's not easy. There are physical things happening. It is difficult for your system. And so I don't know that it was necessarily meant to be a pleasant thing. But we do know that Terry Schiavo, in 2005, there was a court case in which her husband was trying to have her feeding tube removed. Her family, her parents were fighting that. Eventually, in the end, her husband did win that court battle, and they did remove the feeding tube. And Terry Schiavo lived for 13 days without food or water. And so, yes, at some point before that, there was damage that was probably reached a point of irreparable. But that's a lot longer than 3 days. If God tells you to do a 3-day fast, I just fully believe that he's going to take care of you and he's going to provide for you and take care of your body. Arthur Wallace says, the absolute fast is an exceptional measure for an exceptional situation. It is something usually reserved for spiritual emergencies. And so, it's not something to be taken lightly. It is serious, and you should know that God's calling you to that when you do that. The other type of fast, which is, we often hear people talk about some kind of fast that they're doing, and there's many variations. And so a partial fast would be something that included those variations of a fast. Sometimes we refer to this as a Daniel fast. However, we don't know exactly what it was that Daniel was and wasn't eating. We know that he wasn't eating the rich foods of the king's table, but we don't have an itemized list, so we don't know exactly what those foods were. And if somebody's doing a Daniel fast, actually, if two people are doing a Daniel fast, there's a good chance that they aren't doing exactly the same thing. People have different ideas of what that is. So we'll just basically, it's a partial fast. And you are abstaining from particular foods and limiting the numbers of meals. It might not even be that you are eating certain foods, but it might be that you're skipping certain meals and you're only having breakfast and lunch and you're not having dinner, something like that. When you're in a large community, you will often find that people are doing a large variety of fasts. You might have as many different fasts as there are people in the room. We've certainly experienced that. And I've seen people do everything from Esther fast to just water to just juice to soups and smoothies to raw foods and, a huge variety of things. So I think that you can always find something that's going to work for whatever your situation is. We'll talk more about that. Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. It also ends up telling us that he was in better health and stronger. And so I believe that's just because of his obedience to the Lord. The Lord had something in that, and he blessed his body in doing that. John's clothes were made of camel's hair, and he had a leather belt around his waist. His food was locusts and wild honey. How about that for a fast? I'm really hoping God never calls me to that one, personally. I might have to see if I could live on honey. Okay, so one thing I want to address is the non-food fast. And that's something that comes up every time there's a community fasting, that comes up. It just does. And I just want to say that anytime you give up something and replace it with time with God, it has value. It is beneficial to you without a doubt. And I don't want to dismiss that, but I do want to talk about some key fundamental differences in non-food fast and food fast. So when you give up food and water, you are giving up something that is essential to your body. It's something that your body has to have. And in doing so, you are forcing yourself to rely on God and to trust Him to take care of you. And so there's just some things that happen. When you fast food, it has both physiological and psychological impacts on your body. This is something that you don't have necessarily, probably not, when you're doing a non-food fast. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, something's gone terribly wrong if you walk past the TV and your mouth starts watering and your stomach starts growling. That's not a normal reaction. It's because we have a physiological need for food. Our bodies need it. They crave it. They want it. They send us signals that we have to have it. And that's something that doesn't happen in these non-food fasts. So they have value. They are great. They are awesome, but they do something different. And so I just want to encourage you. I think that the Bible has us doing food fasts because it forces us to rely on God. I don't know if they did other fasts and gave up throwing rocks. I don't know. I don't know what they did for fun. So maybe it was a game. I don't know. Toss the rock in the pot. I'm sure there were things that they did for entertainment. And there may have been times that they gave those up, but that's not what the Bible tells us. That's not what we see. That's when God calls his people to fast. That's not what he was having them do. So yes, there's value in that, especially if you are replacing that with time with God. There's absolutely value in it, but it does something different in you. So one of the next things I want to move into is there's some battlefields. As soon as you decide you're going to fast, they all start kicking into play. The first one's your mind. The first question you have to ask yourself, and this might sound silly, but then when you start thinking about it, you understand. The first question you ask yourself is, do you want to make fasting work for you? Or are you looking for a way to make fasting not work for you? We've all been there. We've all done it. Somebody starts talking about fasting, and the first thing that comes to mind is the 5 reasons you can't do it right now. It might be that next Friday you have a big project due, and so you have to have full focus, and you need all of your mental powers to be able to do this. So I'm not trying to call anyone out, so I'm not looking at anyone. It's kind of funny to me, though, too, because as soon as we talk about fasting, we suddenly become willing to talk about our weaknesses. Any other time, we don't go around telling everybody what we can't do. But you start fasting and you start going, well, I can't do that because, and this because, and so suddenly we can't do a lot of stuff. Maybe you've gone past that, and when somebody says fasting, you don't even think about it. You've already decided in the past that you can't fast. And so somebody says fasting, and you're just like, I wonder what everyone else is going to be fasting. And I think that we've put ourselves there before, where we just like, I can't do it. That's the end. I've already decided can't do it. So if this is where you are, I'm going to encourage you that fasting is a powerful tool that God has given to you, and that it's time to take that back. That's a tool that he intended for you to have and to use. And so I just encourage you to go to God on that and talk to him about what he has to say for you in the matter. The other one that immediately comes up is health concerns. People are like, oh, it's bad for you. You're depleting your body of nutrients and all of this stuff. Like, there's all kinds of arguments. You can find them. As soon as you say you're fasting, you'll hear 20 of them. You might find it interesting to know that fasting actually has many health benefits. Some of the conditions that may be benefited by fasting include skin conditions such as eczema, psoriasis, irritable bowel syndrome, rheumatoid arthritis, high cholesterol, Crohn's disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, high blood pressure, digestive disturbances, obesity, and asthma. Obesity I put on there because it was on every list. I'm not really suggesting that that's the best treatment for that, or any of these actually, but what we see in research is opposite of what people are telling us. There are many health benefits, and actually if you Google it, there's a whole lot more. I mean, there's like lists of 50 things that it helps and 100 things that it helps, and there's all these things that they've done studies, they have done research, they find that it helps people. One study that I found really interesting was they actually did a study, and they found that people who fast actually live longer. And so, or people who fast regularly, I should say. And so that kind of goes against everything that people tells you about it being bad for your health. Another one that we commonly see is I'm underweight, can't fast. Or I have a job with manual labor, can't fast. But research has shown that as long as the individual is healthy, that they return to their normal weight in a short amount of time after they resume eating. I think all of us know that to be true. Every time I fasted, my weight has gone right back where it started. So I kind of tend to agree with that your weight's going to go right back where it was. The other thing you can consider is if you're serious about fasting and you want to do it and you're concerned about your weight or that you have to have calories to burn because you have a manual labor job, you could also consider a meal replacement shake. All the calories, zero pleasure. So immediately you're thinking, well, that doesn't sound fun. Again, we're talking about fasting. So it's about taking away that pleasure that we get And, those shakes are going to get old after like 3. You're not going to enjoy them, but you will get the calories. And so if you have a full-time manual job and you're like burning 4,000 calories a day, you can still get those calories and be able to function in your job. But I would absolutely still say that you're fasting. We usually automatically grant exemptions to fasting for certain people, like those who are pregnant, nursing, have pre-existing health conditions, or an eating disorder. Believe it or not, people in this group can also actually benefit from certain types of fast. Josh's dad is a doctor, and Josh is thinking, I don't know. But here's the deal. If I were to go to Dr. Shepard and say, Dr. Shepard, I have whatever. I'm not pregnant, just so you know. But if I was to go to Dr. Shepard and say I'm pregnant or I'm nursing or I have this health condition, and I am going to do a fast that involves, I'm going to eat fruits and vegetables, I'm going to eat meats, but I'm going to cut out caffeine, I'm going to cut out sugar, I'm going to cut out artificial sweeteners, I'm going to cut out processed foods. Dr. Shepard would be like, yes, go for it. And so, there's lots of things that we can cut out that are unnecessary items in our diet. And we just have a way of, if there's something we can't have, we're going to want it. This is the way it works. And I'm convinced that it's always been that way because Eve was in the garden. She could have all that she wanted to eat from any of the trees and plants in the garden, except one. And we all know that she ate the one that she couldn't have. And so I'm convinced that you can give up things and you will be making a sacrifice. And you will be all of those things mentally and physically that your body does when you're fasting still happen, even if you're only giving up certain things. So if you do this, you're eliminating nothing essential, but you're also getting the great health benefits of it, along with participating in a fast. The next battlefield is our emotions. And this is one that it can be all over the place. So in addition to our logical arguments, we carry a lot of emotional baggage. We are in a constant tug of war between self-indulgence and self-discipline. You know this anytime you want to have a snack and you're trying to decide if you would like cake or carrots. You know that you should choose the carrots, but you really want to choose the cake. So it's a constant battle that we always have. We are bombarded with TV commercials, magazine ads, billboards, and restaurants on every corner. You see the ads for diets, gyms, and weight loss clinics alongside the mouthwatering images of food. Food, eating, and not eating are constant companions causing pain and shame. It's something that people struggle with. We see the images of these models who are starving themselves, and we see not just girls, but guys, men and women of all ages, trying to aspire to be like that and putting their bodies through torture to be like that. We also see people who are overweight and struggle and are in a constant struggle on one diet to another as they battle it. There are nearly 8,000 books on fasting on Amazon, and many of them are from a weight loss perspective. The goal of fasting is not to lose weight. So, again, we talked about how you normally go back to your weight. So that is not the goal. And we need to go back to the question that Matt talked about in one of his sessions. Who are we fasting for? If we're fasting to lose weight, we are doing it for ourselves. And that's not the purpose of fasting. Fasting can also be used to hide an eating disorder. If you have a history of an eating disorder, tell someone. and have them keep you accountable. Eating disorders thrive in secrecy. And I just caution you to be careful. If you are a leader of a friend of someone who has had an eating disorder, pay attention. We have in the past had a case of a gal that came to us. She came to us at a busy time. We were getting ready to leave for another city. And Matt and I were there for a couple of weeks when she first arrived, but we left early to go prepare for everyone else to arrive in this other city. And so I noticed some things before we left, that she was already fasting. She said she was fasting, and we were getting ready to go into a 40-day fast. And so I just kind of took a note that something about it just seemed a little different to me. Wasn't so much that she was fasting. We had people fasting all the time, but just something about it just made me a little cautious. So we get to this other city. She arrives there, and some things just don't seem right again. Like, I'm not saying that you have to look terrible when you fast, but usually you can tell when people are fasting. You see the impact of it on them. She was quite happy to be fasting, and seemed quite good with it. And I'm not saying that you have to be, depressed and any of that when you're fasting. But there was just something different about it. Like if you're around people who fast, you kind of see what that normally looks like. I started having some more questions, so I called back to somebody who had stayed back here, and I said, hey, can you pull her file and look at her application? And they did. And sure enough, she had had a history of anorexia. Now, great that we caught it. It would have been greater if we had realized it ahead of time and paid attention. And so I encourage you, when you're fasting with somebody and in a group, that you just pay attention, that you be aware. If you're a leader in a ministry and you have things on file from history, just be extra vigilant and watchful so that you're helping them and not enabling them to hide that under the guise of fasting. So just, you want to watch out for them. Another problem that we have is that we've been conditioned to do what makes us happy. Going without food doesn't tend to make us happy. We live in a society that says every desire should be fulfilled as soon as possible. A good example is we have fast food on every corner. If we want to eat, all we do is pull off and we can get something to eat, like in just a couple of minutes. We don't even have to wait for them to cook it. Like, it's super fast. Credit cards. If we want something and we can't afford it, we can just whip out the plastic and we can have it because we want it. And so we're just used to being able to have things when we want it. It goes contrary to what is the norm in America, to fast, because you don't give your body what it wants when it wants it. This is a quote from Lynn Babb. As a result of the barrage of advertising we have experienced all our lives, we have become fearful of deprivation of any kind. We have become subtly convinced that the indulgence of every appetite is psychologically and physically healthy. If I forgo any pleasures, I might be diminished as a person. And so we give in. Sometimes it's as a status quo. You give in and you have it because everybody else has it, or because you deserve it because they told you deserved it. So we just give in, and it's not enough to just say, no, I don't want that. We're conditioned to believe that we should have it just because we can. Another problem area we get into is we think of fasting as punishment. And as a discipline, we kind of we take those two words and we use them interchangeably, discipline and punishment. While fasting is a discipline, it is not a punishment. It's a discipline of making space for God, just like you do when you're reading your Bible or setting aside time to pray. There's things that we have to do in our life all the time, that we're not punishing ourselves. I'm not punishing myself by doing dishes. I do it because it is a necessary thing. You have to discipline yourself to do that. You have to discipline yourself to take out the trash. Otherwise, your house is stinky and smelly and overflowing with trash. Like, there are things that we do as part of a discipline that just because they're necessary things for life. They're not punishment. It's just the way things are. And fasting is that kind of discipline. It's just something that we need and we do, and we can plan for that, and it's not a punishment. Another thing we do is we use food to satiate every emotion. Many of our memories are connected to food, both good and bad memories. We eat when we're happy. We eat when we're sad. We eat when we have a hard day. I mean, often we think of like funerals. Afterwards, a lot of times the family gets together and has a big meal. Weddings, the family gets together and has a big meal. You have a bad day, you stop and get a cupcake or make brownies. Or brownie did not just happen to end up as the example here. Last night, I was feeling a little convicted because I was a little stressed about today, and I thought, gosh, I want a brownie. And I did not let myself have a brownie because then I knew that I was giving in. And so it's like, nope, I'm not going to have a brownie. I wasn't fasting, but it goes to what we use food for. We use food as our comfort instead of God. And so I was feeling a little emotional need, and so I was kind of looking for food, wanting it to be my solution. And so a lot of times in the I can't have it, because you can't have it because you're fasting, you have to find another solution. And so you turn to God and you tell him that you can't have a brownie. and then you have a little conversation with him, and he's able to minister to you at that point. And this is what God wants for us all the time. He wants us to always turn to him for our comfort. Whether it's we had a bad day or we lost a family member or whatever that thing is, he wants us to turn to him for our comfort. But also in those celebration times when something was really awesome, he wants us to come to him and tell him that was really awesome. Thank you. Like, that was great. And not just celebrate with food and forget who it was that brought that thing, that great moment, that great thing to you. If we use food to satiate every emotion, we neglect to both give thanks to God and to deal with our emotional baggage. Praise be to God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Now, that is a really important reason to receive your comfort from God. It says, with the comfort we receive from him, we'll be able to comfort others. So I like to cook. Everybody knows I like to cook. And it is great if I can take my friend that had a bad day, if I can take them a pie. And that will give them a temporary comfort. But you need to be able to take more than just a pie. You need to have gone to God and know the comfort of God to be able to bring that to them, a lasting comfort that's more than what you can satisfy with your appetite. Another area that we can run into problem emotionally is it can be difficult to identify with those less fortunate than ourselves. When we are feeling those hunger pains and feeling the lack and feeling the doing without, you can start thinking about people who don't have it all the time. You can start thinking about those who don't know when or where their next meal is coming from. And so sometimes that's really hard, and that has an emotional effect on us. That's normal, but use it to gain a compassion for them because they are in the heart of God and they are his people. Another battlefield we run into is the body. Your body does not necessarily like fasting and enjoy it. So in preparing to fast, a lot of the symptoms that you have during a fast, like the first few days, it's hunger. But the hunger that we experience is typically more along the lines of desire. We want food because we have conditioned our bodies to have food. And we're surrounded by advertisements and everything, then they just make you want food. In America, very few people have actually experienced hunger. While you do feel hungry, your body is not starving. But a lot of those symptoms that you experience beyond the first few days when it's mostly just hunger, pain, beyond those first few days, a lot of what you're experiencing is all the toxins that we take into our body from living in a city and just what's in the atmosphere and from the carpet and from the chairs and from everything has chemicals in it. The food we take in, there's all kinds of stuff in the food, the pesticides they spray on it, and your body is made to deal with that. Like your liver processes all of those toxins and wastes and gets rid of them. But a lot of those get stored in your fat tissues in your body. And so a lot of what you're experiencing is once you start burning those fat reserves and your body starts using those after the first few days, all of those toxins that were stored in your fat are coming back through the liver. And so your body has multiple channels for getting rid of those toxins. And they're like through your mouth, your lungs, your skin, your liver, your kidneys, your bowels, like all of those help you get rid of that. And so once you release a bunch of those toxins back into your system, it's all trying to come out every which way. And so one of the things you can do ahead of time of a fast is you can reduce the toxins that you're taking in. And that could be in giving up processed food ahead of a fast. So just eliminating that, trying to eat lots of fruits and vegetables, maybe even consider organic so that you're not getting just the pesticides and all that stuff, but just limit what you're putting in so that your liver is getting a little break where it can kind of catch up on everything that's already currently in your body. There's also a lot of things that you can do. There's all kinds of supplements that you can take to help rid your body of toxins. People will do juice fast to rid their body of toxins. People will do like a raw food fast to get rid of toxins. We have one friend who did a 40-day fast. He was here. He was not looking so good. I don't know, he was like 30-something days in. He just did not look good. And he just had a hard time. And, he ended up ending the fast, but he just, was not doing well. So this same friend, a couple years later, decides he's going to do it again, even though he felt he was kind of on death's doorstep that first time. He decides he's going to do it again. And this time, before he fasts, he decides, I'm going to take some steps to get my body ready. And so did some research and decided to use some bentonite clay. And so he was using the clay beforehand and help remove some of the toxins from his body. And he did that fast and he felt great. And so, there's steps we can take to get our body ready. So I encourage you to do that. If you know you're going to be fasting, sometimes we don't know ahead of time. And so we can't help alleviate some of those symptoms that we have as our bodies get rid of all of the things that we've stored. But if you do, I encourage you to try and help your body, give it some extra benefits of getting all of that stuff out before you start. Headaches are another common problem when you fast. That's one of them that you typically experience right away, especially if you gave up coffee. Not that anyone would ever give up coffee. So caffeine withdrawal is the most common reason for having headaches when you fast. And so one thing you can do if you're going to give that up when you fast, I encourage you to start weaning yourself down in a couple of weeks before you start, so that your body is not craving that and needing that because it's used to having it. Timing's another thing that you might want to consider before you fast. That's not always a luxury that you have, but sometimes it is. So if you're going to start a fast, God has called just you personally to a fast, and it is July 2nd. If God hasn't told you to start immediately, you might want to wait till July 5th. Especially if family's involved. Family often does not take to you showing up to the picnic and not participating. They don't always like it. So if you can do that, I encourage you, consider those things. If God hasn't given you timing otherwise, consider, the people around you, your family in particular, that can be upset or offended if you're fasting during their thing. Another way that we can possibly do that is if we're doing a regular fast. If we are fasting every week, like our team here, we do a weekly fast. And we used to do it on Tuesdays. But at the beginning of the year, we started doing it on Mondays. And there's no great spiritual reason for switching the days. It is actually that on Monday, everybody's here in the office where the food is not. And on Tuesdays, everybody is at home, and it's a work day where they're doing manual labor sometimes, and all the food is there. So it seemed easier and wiser to do it on Monday. So, God didn't tell us that we couldn't do it on Monday. He didn't seem to have a problem with that. And so, Monday works. So during the fast, we already talked about you're going to experience some hunger pains or desires. Take those as a cue. We have those for a reason, because we need something. But because you're fasting, I encourage you to know ahead of time what you're fasting for. If you know ahead of time what you're fasting for, you have determined that, then when you have those hunger pains, you use those as a reminder to pray for that thing you said you were going to pray for. And so that is your cue that it's time to pray. And so don't forget that, because it's not about skipping meals. It's not about not having the food. It's about taking that time to pray. So our body sends us reminders that it's time to pray, and we need to listen to those. It's less about what you give up than it is about what you replace it with. Only in this can a fast fulfill its purpose. We are not subject to our body's desires. Another thing that you can experience is dizziness or lightheadedness. This happens a lot. I've seen it happen because, you're in community, so you get to watch these funny things. And so you see the person stand up and they get 10 steps away, and all of a sudden they're kind of swaying, and they're like, oh gosh, I can't see. They stood up just a little bit too fast. You got several things going on here. Most commonly, it's probably because your blood sugar has not stabilized since you haven't been taking food. Your blood sugar is a little out of whack, and so, So anyway, just stand up slow. Give yourself time to readjust. Another thing you may need is, especially in those first few days, is a little more rest. So try and don't pack your schedule. Don't fill it up with things to do. Don't commit to doing more than you can do during a fast. You need to give your body the time that it needs to rest, to be able to go through that process of, getting used to it, and then also getting all the yuck out of your body. Some of these things that we're talking about apply primarily in the normal fast. If you're doing a partial fast, you're probably not going to experience a lot of these things. These things are primarily if you are giving up all food or severely limiting your food intake. These are things that you can experience. Otherwise, you're mostly going to stay in that hunger and craving zone where you just want food. So you have that constant reminder to pray, but you might not have some of these other symptoms. Water is very important in a fast. It can be a tendency to drink less water because you feel like it just runs right through. Like you drink a glass of water and 5 minutes later you're going to the bathroom. And so a lot of times we'll limit our water because we want to limit our trips to the restroom. But help your body. That's part of the elimination process, getting rid of those toxins and the waste out of your body. The water helps flush out your system. So let your body keep having that. Plus dehydration is another thing that's going to cause you to have those headaches and that tiredness and just that sluggish feeling. So just make sure that you're getting plenty of liquid. Oh, another thing about the water, though. I'll go back to that real quick. If you are not, so those toxins are getting loosened up from your system. Your liver's pulling those out of the fat reserves and they're back in the body. So if you're not getting enough water, those toxins that all just got pulled out just get absorbed right back into your system. That's not the goal. You want them to come out. So breaking the fast. The best, again, this is going to apply primarily to the normal fast. If you are already eating food of some sort, your body is still in the business of digesting and eliminating and all of those functions that need to happen for that to happen. But if you've not been eating food, you do need to go slowly. Because you just put your digestive organs, you just send them all on vacation. Nobody's at work. And so they all have to get used to it again, like the enzymes that need to be excreted, that has to start happening again. And, our desire is to immediately jump to whatever it is we've been craving. Whatever we wanted, we want to have it now. And so I encourage you not to do that. I encourage you to go slowly. And when you start eating, you need to pay attention. Your body is going to send you signals that tell you if you're overdoing it. Some of those signals might be stomach pains, cramping, bloating, indigestion, nausea, or any other discomfort like digestively. These are signs that you're trying to go too fast. And sometimes we eat so fast that we have already eaten too much by the time we know that we're uncomfortable. So that's why we need to go slow. You need to start with small portions, just little bits. A good thing to start with is just some juice or broth or just a clear liquid so that your body's like, oh, okay, you're sending something that I need to do something with. And you have a little bit of nutrients in there that your body needs to figure out how to manage. And so just do a little bit of that every few hours. I'm going to pause here for just a moment also. So this is a normal fast, but this is also a fast that has gone on for more than a few days. If your body has not been doing it for a day or 2 days or 3 days, your body still remembers what it wants to do. It's still telling you, hey, it's time to eat, because it's still waiting to do that. So we're talking about a longer fast, a longer normal fast. So the broth every few hours. After that, you can add some fruit, see how you react to that. Still no pain, everything's good. Then maybe the next time you eat, you can add some cooked vegetables or a salad or maybe a broth-based soup. And then if everything's going good, then you can add a little bit of meat. After you tried the broth and all of that for a few meals, and move on to some lean meats. And then other meats, red meats that are harder to digest, some dairy, breads, other things that are just a little harder to digest. Just take those slow. Just eat a little bit, one at a time. Don't just try to okay, it's time for a hamburger now. And just kind of put it all down at once. Just kind of slowly introduce them to your body. You can see what's bothering you and what's not bothering you if you do it that way. And so, just reintroduce those slowly back to your body. And within a week, if you've been doing a complete fast for 40 days or whatever it is, within a week, you should be able to eat whatever you were eating before. You shouldn't have any problems digestively and with everything functioning. Everything should be up and running the way it was before, except for your stomach has shrunk from what it was before, and so you won't be able to eat as much. So you still need to kind of eat slowly so that your body gives you the signal that, hey, I'm full, before you've already downed too much. Another thing that I want to just encourage everybody is fasting is a lifestyle. We need to exercise self-control in all areas. A fasted lifestyle is cutting out the unnecessary. A lot of times when we take up these fasts that are not food, we're giving up things that we already know are interfering with our time with the Lord, or interfering with things that our bodies need, like sleep. Sometimes we're staying up really late and watching shows, and then the next morning we regret it because we didn't get enough sleep, and it's just hard on your body physically. So I just encourage you, if you're in those non-food fasts, like if God's telling you to give those up, consider, does he mean for a period of time? And maybe it's cutting back. Maybe it's not giving it up entirely. Maybe it's cutting back. Maybe it is giving up entirely. But we need to consider, does that need to be a lifestyle change and not just a fast? Is that something that we need to give over to the Lord? Another thing is limiting or eliminating foods and other substances that are not beneficial to your health. This might include caffeinated beverages, processed foods, sugar, artificial sweeteners, cigarettes, alcohol, etc. Usually we know that these things aren't good for us, and sometimes, we just like them and we just want them. Been there. But we can limit those or eliminate those. And I'm not even saying that you have to eliminate them, but reduce the amount that you're taking in so that if you're going to be fasting on a regular basis, that your body has less of that garbage to deal with. When you go into a season of fasting, that your body is already ready, that it's already prepared, it's already not overloaded with all of these toxic substances. And that might just be, I'm just going to cut it back. So, most of the time I'm eating what's good for me. But, sometimes I have these other things. But, mostly in this country, we eat a lot of everything that's processed and all of that stuff, and with huge ingredient lists. The reason I want to stress processed foods is because I don't believe that man has done anything to improve upon what God created. I refuse to believe that God created an inferior product that we were then able to fix or improve. I know that we think we have. We have increased yields of products where we can feed a whole lot more people. What we don't tell you is we throw away 40% of the crop because it wasn't perfect. It didn't look beautiful in some way or another, so we threw it away. And so while we may have, improved it in that it has increased the yield, another thing like, say, let's look at tomatoes. We have made tomatoes so that they can be transported better, that they don't crush, that they stay nice and firm, so that when they get to the store, they still look like a tomato. But we did a lot of hybridizing and all of that to get to that tomato. And if you compare, they've taken the nutritional value of a tomato today that you get at the grocery store with one from 40 years ago. And the nutritional data on them isn't even similar. Because we've taken it, we didn't necessarily look for the most nutritious qualities. That wasn't the qualities we were looking for. We were looking for ones that made them last longer so that they could be stored for longer, so that they could transport better. And so, we made it so that it was convenient for us, but it wasn't necessarily the best. And so another thing that we've done is, I'm sure that you all have heard this, but like chickens, everybody likes the white meat. And so we have made chickens that have an unusually disproportionate amount of white breast meat. But in doing this, these chickens can't actually walk around. They just sit on the ground and they can't actually move, or they fall forward. And so, they have to kill them in 12 weeks or they die. And so, we've changed things and we've done our improvements, but we haven't necessarily made things better. And so it's just I think a general rule is just, what God has made is probably better for us than any of the things that we can change or whatever to make them convenient for us. And so these foods come with a trade-off. And a lot of the toxins that you're trying to eliminate out of your body when you're doing a fast that your body is reacting to and causing skin eruptions and all these pleasant things, a lot of those can be found on the ingredient list of all the foods you're eating. And so all of those things that you can't pronounce are things that your body has to process and get rid of. And so I just encourage you, if you want to take fasting as a lifestyle, to treat your body in a way that it's prepared and more capable of doing that with fewer ill effects and fewer hard days when you are fasting. The last thing I want to leave you with is fasting makes us aware of our inner need. We need God just as we need food. Fasting reminds us and it reboots our spiritual appetite. Fasting is an opportunity to grow in intimacy with God. And so I just encourage you that when you are fasting, that you use it as that opportunity. And so Matt's going to close us out in prayer tonight, so if you'd all stand up.
I saw a miracle once. We did an Esther fast, and a young man on our team broke an Esther fast with a 2-liter of Mountain Dew. And he didn't die. It was a miracle. Not wisdom. Maybe you're wondering, why did we end this series with a talk like this? I don't know about you, but don't you just crave the practicals sometimes? It's like we need the spiritual foundation, but bringing in a practical dimension. Some of it's almost like maybe you already knew it, maybe you just needed to hear it again. But it's like the practical side of things is it's so needed, and it has to be said because it's like prayer. We talk about prayer more than we pray, generally speaking. And with fasting, we talk about fasting a whole lot more than we actually do it. And probably for me, the biggest thing, the most impactful thing of a teaching like this is that I want to live a lifestyle. I want to have a life that's postured in such a way that is spiritually right, but then physically my body is lining up with what my spirit man is wanting to do. And so that, Mondays come along, it's a fasting day as a community. I want to invite everybody to join us in that. And even if you're not a part of this community, take one day a week and get past all the arguments that Kim was talking about and highlighting of why you can't do it. Kim says you'll live longer. Take one day a week and fast. You study the early church in the first century. Their practice was to fast 2 days a week. And I want to invite you into that weekly fast. It is a conditioning. It's a spiritual conditioning. It's also a physical conditioning. And what I like about it is so that when the day comes, and it always comes, when it is necessary that as a people, as a corporate body of believers, that we have to respond, that God is inviting his people, that without warning, we must fast right now. I want my heart to say yes and not no. And here's how these invitations come. It's usually with a dream. Somebody will have a dream, and in their dream they were in McDonald's. I highlight this because this has happened. I can't tell you how many times, dozens upon dozens of times. In the morning, we'll get together and we're discussing dreams that we had the night before or whatever. And somebody's like, well, I was in McDonald's and we were doing this. And then, somebody came in and it was George Washington. What was George Washington doing in there? I don't know. And it's like, whatever the dream is. But inevitably, God has this sense of humor, and he likes to have hidden meaning, right? That he's not talking about going to McDonald's. He's talking about fast food, fasting food. And so all of a sudden, it's like a little bit of a trick, it's a Trojan horse. It's like, wait a minute, we were in McDonald's. We're supposed to be eating. No, the proper interpretation of the dream is that God was inviting you to fast food. So anyway, these invitations come, and they'll come in a number of ways. Sometimes you just get into a Joel 2 moment where there is a crisis at hand, and God awakens our hearts, connects our heart to the crisis that the nation is facing, or that a particular people group is facing, and the Lord invites us. And the whole story of Joel 2 is He invites the people to declare a fast, and no one was exempt, were they? Not even the nursing mothers. I'm glad Kim actually pointed that out, that no one's exempt in moments like that. And so when it comes, and it will come, let's have a life that's ready to say yes to the Lord, to say yes to the invitation, and not to sort of grieve and wail and moan and drag our feet. Amen? Amen. So the practicals are important. So let's just pray here. Lord, we just thank you for your faithfulness. Lord, we thank you again tonight, Lord, that you don't ask us to do these ridiculous things so that you can sit back and watch us fail and have a good laugh. But Lord, you give us these sweet invitations, Lord, to break our affections off of the world and connect with you, Lord, that we would grow in the knowledge of you, that we would break and divorce our heart from the affair with the world, and that we would have our hearts turned to you as the tender one, the one who woos us. So, Lord, we just thank you for the grace for fasting. We thank you for the grace that you release in our lives, that we can respond to you, that we can enter into a life that is fully committed and fully responsive. Just put your hand on your heart right now. Just as I pray this, says, God, I want to be fully responsive to you, responsive to your word, responsive to your spirit speaking to me today. God, I want to be fully responsive to you. I want my yes to be just a shouted yes, not a whimpering yes, or even possibly a no. God, we want to shout yes to your invitation, Lord. And we just thank you for the grace for fasting, Lord. And Father, I just pray for every person here tonight, Lord, that you would just arrest our thoughts concerning fasting, anything that is not in alignment with you and your word, that you would arrest those thoughts and just bring into captivity all of those things that would war against the knowledge of you, that would try to lead us down false paths or try to convince us otherwise. God, we want those thoughts to be brought captive tonight. And Lord, we say yes to you right now, and we just our spirit says yes, and now we just speak to our bodies and we say, come into alignment with the word of the Lord. Come into alignment with what God wants to do in my generation.